years MPs as prepare to debate a motion of confidence that looks set to topple the centre-right government and trigger a return to the polls in May. Luis Montenegro, the Prime Minister who heads the Democratic Alliance platform, has governed Portugal since its narrow victory in last year's election, called the Vote of Confidence, which is due to take place on Tuesday. In response to growing questions over his family's business activities, Montenegro has denied any wrongdoing or ethical breaches and called for the vote last week, saying he wanted to end the atmosphere of permanent insinuations and intrigues. It is all but certain to trigger a new general election, as both the centre-left Socialist Party and the far-right Chega Party have said that they will vote against the government. Between them, the PS and Chega have 128 seats in Portugal's 230-seat parliament, while the AD has 80. If, as expected, Montenegro loses the vote, Portugal's president, Marcelo de Rebelo Sousa, is likely to dissolve parliament, prompting a new election whose earliest dates would be the 11th or 18th of May. Portugal's last general election, held a year ago, was triggered by the resignation in November 23 of the Socialist Prime Minister Antonio Costa, after an investigation was launched into alleged illegalities in his administration's handling of large green investment projects. Following the arrest of the ex-Philippine President Duterte, China has warned the International Criminal Court against politicalization and double standards. Duterte was arrested after arriving from Hong Kong, and police took him into custody on orders of the International Criminal Court in connection with a crime against humanity case filed against him. The court had been investigating the mass killings that happened during Duterte's deadly crackdown against illegal drugs. The surprise arrest sparked a commotion at the airport, where lawyers and aides of Duterte loudly protested what they, along with a doctor and lawyers, were prevented from coming close to him after he was taken into police custody. While it is not clear where he has been taken by the police, the government said the 79-year-old former leader was in good health and was examined by government doctors. The Duterte administration moved to suspend the court's investigation in late 2021 by arguing that Philippine authorities were already looking into the same allegations, saying the ICC court, a court of last resort, did not have jurisdiction. Meanwhile, here's how people feel about Duterte's arrest.
Mayado, galit po ako. Tanda na po ni Tatay Digong, tsaka hindi niya po yun deserve. Kasi yung ginawa niya para po yun sa Pilipinas. Maayos po yung panahon noon, tahimik. Nabawasan po talaga yung krimen. Nagkaroon po ng kaayusan nung siya yung nakaupo. Hindi niya...
Nalungkot ako. Kasi hindi ko naman nakalain na aabot sa ganito, na arestuhin siya. Kasi para sa akin din kasi... madami naman siyang nagawang mabuti para sa...
A petition has been filed with the Philippine Supreme Court following the arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte on an international criminal court warrant. China has said that it hopes that a just and lasting solution can be found to the three-year war between Ukraine and Russia. This comes just ahead of talks due involving Ukrainian and US officials in Saudi Arabia. According to Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning, China supports all efforts that contribute to a peaceful resolution of the crisis. She also stated that China is willing to continue work with the international community to play a constructive role for a critical and political resolution of the crisis. China presents itself as a neutral party in the war, unlike US and other Western nations. However, China is a close political and economic ally of Russia, and NATO members have branded Beijing a decisive enabler of the war. China has issued a stern warning to the United Kingdom, urging it to avoid provoking tensions in the South China Sea. The warning comes after UK Foreign Minister David Lammy called China's actions in the disputed waters dangerous and destabilizing. China Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning responded today, saying the UK should respect China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights. She also called on the UK to refrain from stirring discord over regional disputes. The South China Sea remains a hotbed of tension, with multiple countries claiming territorial rights. HIV patients in Kenya are facing a severe shortage of life-saving medications as US foreign aid remains frozen. The freeze has disrupted the distribution of antiretroviral drugs, leaving millions of doses sitting unused in a warehouse just outside of Nairobi. Clinics like the one where Alice Okwiri collects her medication are now rationing supplies to just 1 month refills. The US government's decision to halt aid was created a dangerous gap in medical supply chains. Although HIV aid is exempt from the freeze, USAID's payment system is still down, blocking the release of critical drugs. Health officials warn that the freeze could leave many without essential treatment.
If you stop ARVs for these children, there is drug resistance. Afterwards, they will get all kind of opportunistic infections. Then we lose one by one.
In the latest update in the North Sea collision, the port has reported that the fires are still going on, while the UK Coast Guard has called for the search of a missing crew member off after a cargo ship crashed into a tank anchored in the North Sea off the English coast. All 23 on board the oil tanker Stena Immaculate are accounted for, but one of the 14 crew members of the Solong cargo ship are still missing. As per reports, one of the 36 people rescued was taken to hospital. The Stena Immaculate was carrying jet fuel and was on a short-term charter to the US Navy at the time of the incident. The cargo ship was reportedly carrying 15 containers of sodium cyanide and an unknown quantity of alcohol. The latest report suggests that there was no indication of any malicious activity or other actors involved in the incident. Guatemala, the country most prone to risk of disaster in Latin America, according to the European Commission's Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, is poised to revolutionize its emergency relief efforts with a disaster-proof communication system. Called DroneBots, the system can transmit vital real-time data during disasters, independent of satellite or mobile connectivity and the internet. As per reports, the system was developed by local agricultural drone startup Aerobots to get data back to the aid agency headquarters from remote regions that often lack stable electricity and internet. DroneBots establish a vital communication network between decision makers, drone operators and volunteers, serving as a crucial lifeline when traditional networks fail. The system demonstrated its potential during a successful test at the National Coordinator for Disaster Reduction Facilities. Test results showed that DroneBots can speed up the delivery of information to emergency responders by 80%. First trialled in 2023 by the UNICEF Office of Innovation, the project is now working with Conred, aiming to expand the deployment of DroneBots to 8 Guatemala's poorest and most vulnerable regions. Uganda's military chief has confirmed the deployment of special forces in South Sudan's capital, Juba, as tensions rise between President Salva Kiir and First Vice President Riek Machar. The move comes after Kiir's government arrested 2 ministers and several senior military officials with Machar. One of the ministers has since been released. Deadly clashes in the northern South Sudan and rising political unrest are putting the fragile 28 peace deal at serious risk. This deal had a deal ended that a 5 brutal year campaign civil war which costed nearly 400,000 lives. Uganda's military chief, Yakuzu, stated that any move against President Kiir would be seen as a declaration of war against Uganda. This deployment marks Uganda's 3rd military intervention in South Sudan since 2013. Fears are mounting that renewed conflict would lead to a humanitarian crisis, sending waves of refugees into Uganda and destabilizing the region. South Sudan's government has not yet responded to requests for comment. An Albanian national who entered the UK illegally has spoken out about his harsh experience after working on a cannabis farm. GZIM, who wished to remain anonymous, was one of the over 12,600 Albanians who crossed the English Channel by small boat in 2022. The number of Albanians making the dangerous journey fell sharply last year to just 616. This was followed by a joint campaign by the UK and Albanian governments. GZIM says his cousins paid for a smuggler about $2,500 to help him cross from France to Dover. After being placed in a hotel, he was left without notice and began working on a cannabis farm. However, following a break-in, he was never paid for his work. He later took a construction job but was forced to accept low wages, where he was unable to cover his expenses to support his family. 5 months after arriving, Gazim returned to Albania, calling his life in the UK unbearable and his journey a desperate attempt for survival. Mike Amesbury has resigned as an MP after being given a prison sentence for punching a constituent, triggering the first by-election of Keir Starmer's government. The Runcorn and Helsby MP was suspended by Labour and lost the party whip in October after a video of the incident on a night out was published online. He was given a 10-week prison sentence, suspended for 2 years, since it became unclear that he would have to resign or face a recall petition. Labour has been planning for a by-election in the Cheshire seat, which it won at the general election with a 14,000 seat majority. Nominations for a candidate opened last week and the application process closed days later with a selection meeting in the constituency expected on Thursday. And that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.